It's just one of those things. That was Donald Trump's final word on the debate stage about a federal housing discrimination lawsuit filed against him in the 1970s. He made the remark while he and Democratic rival Hillary Clinton were debating the question of race in America. The discussion was wide-ranging. Let's listen.
Race remains a significant challenge in our country. Unfortunately, race still determines too much, often determines where people live, determines what kind of education in their public schools they can get, and yes, it determines how they're treated in the criminal justice system.
We need law and order in our country. Our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot.
When asked what he would say to people offended by his birther movement against President Obama, Trump responded this way.
She failed to get the birth certificate. When I got involved, I didn't fail. I got him to give the birth certificate. So I'm satisfied with it.
We're talking about racial healing in this segment. What do you say to Americans?
Well, it was very, I say nothing. I say nothing because I was able to get him to produce it. He should have produced it a long time before. I say nothing. But let me just tell you, when you talk about healing, I think that I've developed very, very good relationships over the last little while with the African American community. I think you can see that.
Just listen to what you heard. And clearly, as Donald just admitted, he knew he was going to stand on this debate stage and Lester Holt was going to be asking us questions, so he tried to put the whole racist birther lie to bed.
Joining me now are CNN commentator and former Democratic South Carolina State Representative Bakari Sellers and Bruce Levell, Executive Director for the National Diversity Coalition for Trump. Bakari, first of all, your reaction, how Donald Trump handled the birther issue, because Lester Holt continued to go back at him saying, well, even after President Obama showed a birth certificate, there was questions by Donald Trump about the validity of it, about continuing the whole birther story, which was not true.
Well, I think that this shows you how unprepared Donald Trump was for this debate last night. I think the most telling statement that he said, and one you're going to hear over and over in ads, is when asked about racial healing in this country, Donald Trump, quote unquote, said, "I say nothing. I say nothing." And Donald Trump, in his 70-some-odd years, or 70 years on this earth, has not done much, if anything, for the African American community. I mean, he stated that he just started trying to build these relationships before. But Donald Trump came in, and we talk about the 60% of Americans who think that he lacks the temperament, but there's also about 60% of Americans who feel as if he exudes some type of racism or bigotry. He did nothing to dispel those notions last night, whether or not it was the racist birther lie, whether or not it's the xenophobia with the young Hispanic lady who was Miss United States, who he happened to call Miss Housekeeper. And this is just Donald Trump, who he is, and he did nothing last night to shake any of that.
Bruce, your reaction?
Well, Anderson, my reaction is, if it wasn't for the Clinton crime bill, we wouldn't be in a lot of this big tobacco mess in terms of the biggest, largest mass incarceration of African Americans in the history. And Bakari, you know that. You serve on 2020 Club with justice reform, and you know that's where that came from. The other thing, too, Anderson, I want to bring up is that the Clinton campaign is so desperate. Donald Trump is surging in the African-American vote. But I just want to point this out. If you go to...
Where do you see him as surging in the African-American vote?
Just hear me out on this. Let me finish. I'll get to that, sir. NDC Trump, National Diversity Coalition for Trump. Please go on. I invite all the viewers to go on there. Click on who we are. We're a coalition that was founded by Michael Cohen, who's Vice President to Donald J. Trump, whose parents are Holocaust survivors. Okay? When you go on the site, we represent Muslim Americans for Trump, African Americans for Trump, African American pastors for Trump, Russian Americans for Trump, Haitian Americans for Trump. We're a million plus strong, Anderson. This has been ongoing since last year.
So where do you see him surging among African Americans?
We're 8+% and higher. We got 20+% of the LA Times. Mitt Romney had 6. We're not even to November 8th. And the Clinton campaign is so desperate that the only thing they can do is try to bring up this birther garbage that they brought up, Anderson. And here's the other thing, too.
What do you mean that they brought up?
The Clinton campaign brought up the birther movement. Factoid, it did. But here's the deal. What people fail to realize, when you are running for office, it is not uncommon to question candidates, their viability. If they're eligible to run for office, whether you live here in the district or you live here, Case in point, John McCain being born in the Philippines, George W.'s service records. Donald Trump could care less if President Obama was green, purple, blue, or orange. There was some question because the Clinton campaign, the chief strategist said, I question President Obama's American roots. The campaign manager who said on your show said that, well, you know, that did come from us, but that was a volunteer. That birther movement, sir, came from there. It is not a racial situation. The Clinton campaign is desperate, Anderson, because they don't have a plan. So this is the best thing they can do.
So, Bakari, I mean, obviously, Patty Solis-Doyle, who explained this again, who explained this again last night, they fired a volunteer who apparently sent out an email questioning. Again, I'm just telling the facts here.
Right.
So, Bakari, to Mr. Levell's point that there's no racial component to Donald Trump's birther issue, what do you say?
No way.
I mean, I just think that that's asinine. I think that Mr. knows that as well. I think the fact is that we know what it's rooted in, but we just don't have to point at the birther issue. We don't have to just point at the birther issue to talk about Donald Trump's issues with race. I mean, we can talk about the fact that he was sued by the Nixon administration for racial discrimination. We can talk about the Central Park Five.
1865,
we can talk about this
no
large
prejudice, no wrongful doing.
I'm just going to finish my statement, Bruce. I'm just going to finish my statement. And not only that, but you go to the fact that last night Donald Trump wanted to simply state that what he's done for African Americans is allow them into Mar-a-Lago, which by no means makes you any civil rights patriot. My challenge to Bruce and everyone else who supports Donald Trump is, yes, we have a problem with mass incarceration. Yes, we need criminal justice reform in this country. Hillary Clinton actually has a plan. Donald Trump has stop and frisk. And if Bruce can sit here and support stop and frisk, he's going to be the only black man that I've ever met in my life who will stand on national TV and say they support stop and frisk.
Is stop and frisk what inner cities in Chicago need?
The subject matter was thousands of especially black children being killed in Chicago. They've done absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm willing. Do you believe in stop and frisk?
Sir, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to save our children.
So stop and frisk.
Mayor Giuliani.
Do you believe it's constitutional? Do you believe it actually works?
You know, we can debate anything in court, but at the end of the day, we've got to do something.
So you support stop and frisk?
Yeah. So anything we can to try to save our black children in Chicago or any other inner cities, whatever we got to do. Mayor Giuliani proved that. We went from 2,500 down to 500. You know, it got debated backward, but it's a proactive solution. We've got to do something instead of just bringing up the race card, you know.
Right. You do admit, though, that the murder rate in New York has continued to drop after stop and frisk itself was stopped. They've actually been focusing more on other ways to get guns off the streets here in New York in a more effective way. That stop and frisk didn't actually get many guns off the streets.
Well, with all due respect, in other cities as well as Chicago, which came up quite extensively. It has been ongoing for months and months. Our children are being killed and murdered and gunned. We have got to do something. And let me say this to Anderson, in relation to race relations. You can't have any relations without peace and law and order. You know, and I'm going to tell you this for a fact, and I've sat in many rooms with pastors. I've been privileged to hear the dialogue that goes on. Donald Trump has so much backing from Sikhs, from African-American pastors, from the faith-based community, because he understands one thing: in order to get beyond the government, it has to be a relationship with different races coming together. You can't do that when there's total chaos in a community. So you have to restore respectfully law and order in order to give all the cultures a chance to come together. Or it's just
when
chaos.
You hear that term law and order that Donald Trump mentions and talked about last night, do you hear it in the same way that Mr. Levell does?
Well, no, and I think that I hear it the way that most African Americans hear it. In fact, he quoted the LA Times poll, which we don't quote at CNN, and not many people view to be credible as a tracking poll.
A blue city, I might say.
Methodology.
A blue city.
But also, I will say that in the last
methodology than others. Go ahead.
Yes, and I think that the last credible poll that came out, Donald Trump actually went down. He was at 3% with African-American support. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that when you say law and order, and we understand the complexities of criminal justice reform, you have to have a plan. And Donald Trump has not echoed a plan. Stop and frisk it harms African-American communities. We know that it targeted African-Americans and Hispanics. We know it didn't work. They didn't lead to arrests. And it was deemed unconstitutional. So now that we have that in one bucket, what else are you going to do? Are you going to talk about community community policing? Are you going to talk about a uniform use of force throughout the country? Are you going to talk about block grants for body cameras and other resources to train? Are we going to talk about implicit bias? We're going to talk about systemic racism. The funny part about Bruce Levell and this National Diversity Council supporting Donald Trump is that although he has all of this support from all of these individuals, last night Donald Trump got on stage and doesn't even know what systemic racism means. And I think that's the largest tragedy.
Bakari,
we have a candidate on stage who doesn't understand the concept.
There isn't
and because
any
he doesn't
racism
understand the
because of
concept,
you.
he cannot cure the ills. There
All right,
isn't
Mr.
any
Levell,
racism.
your comment, and then we got to go.
Anderson, real quick, coming from, I guess I'm categorized as deplorable and a super predator. I guess that's what we are, Bakari. That came out of your candidate's mouth. Anderson, at the end of the day, the Clinton campaign is so desperate. Donald Trump has touched the nerve of the African-American community and all communities to bring this dialogue to the forefront better than anyone has ever had. These particular municipalities and cities that have been under Democratic rule have done absolutely nothing except we'll promise you vote for us. We'll be back. I'll see you in 4 years, and nothing gets done.
Bruce Lavelle, I appreciate your perspective. Bakari Sellers as well. Thank you,
Thanks
gentlemen,
for having
coming
me.
up.